welcome everybody. How was the camera? I need to check the camera. Yes, that's quite all right. If I stay here, you should see me from the online people too. So yes, welcome everybody. So happy to see you all here and everybody online too. Hello, welcome. So happy to have you here. I'll just have a couple of words to welcome you guys, and then I'll leave the floor to Joel. So this is a collaboration event by LGIN and Magnusson. I represent LGIN. So what is LGIN then? LGIN is a peer support and mentoring network for game companies. Specifically, any game company in Finland can be even before they are a company. Also game teams or companies in Finland, anybody can join. And it also has the incubation track, which is more like a hands-on support program, and that's also only for teams and companies in the capital area. I'm not going to talk too much about that, so you can go see more about LGIN on that address, so lgin.fi. And you can always contact me. I'm Suvi. Hi, Suvi Kiviniemi. So I run the LGIN, and you can always contact me if you have any questions about that. LGIN, again, what is it? It's a part of the Turbini Campus Incubation Program, which is, again, a part of Metropolia University of Applied Sciences, which is the biggest university of applied sciences, specifically in Finland. We are also supported by the city of Helsinki. So huge thank you to both the city of Helsinki and my teammates at Metropolia and Turbini. Also, well, I should also give a shout out to everybody in LGIN, because those are the most important people for this. So there's quite a bunch of mentors and teams and companies in LGIN already. There's like 27 active companies at the moment, and like somewhere around 30 mentors. So that's pretty impressive. But yeah, that's what we are. You can always go to the website and see more, and you can also present questions. The online people are also here. You can come and ask me about stuff. Some practical information before we start with the actual program. The bathrooms are all like right outside. They are all gender neutral, and like they have stalls, so no worries. There's a core you need for the door, but it's right next to this door, so you find it there. Well, I think you all found the snacks already, but there's still some. You can grab anything you'd like. No need to save them. Just take whatever you wish. Thank you to Magnusson for the snacks. We really appreciate that. We are recording this event, and it will be available online later on. So you can rewatch anything you'd like later or share it later. There will be a QA after both Joeli's talk and the panel. Offline people, you guys, if you want to ask a question, just raise a hand and we'll bring you a microphone so the online people can also hear you. Online people, please use the QA for questions. You can use the chat for anything else, but use the QA for actual questions so that others can easily find them. If you need help with like anything and you are here in this room, come to me, just tug my sleeve, I'll help you. And if you need help with anything online, just ping Ada. So yeah, I think that's basically what I had to say. There's my contact info. If you want to contact me for anything, feel free. But everybody, welcome. And thank you so much to Magnusson for actually making this happen with us. And I think I'll just invite Joel here next, and I can switch your slides. So you can just take the microphone. Welcome.
So, hey and welcome. on my behalf as well. Like so we said, I'm from attorney law Magnusson, and I work with game law. So first about this event series, and later on about shareholders agreements. So who am I? Here's my name, Joeli Niva. I have 2 degrees, BBA and Master of Laws, and I specialize in the game law and technology, IPRs, data protection, corporate law in general, and I work as an associate Magnusson. And just a fun fact, I love strategy games, so please ask me about those. So how did this event series came to be? At the start of this year, I started asking our clients, my friends, whoever I've met at events for the game industry, what would they like to know more about? And same topics came over and over again. And then I met Suvi, and we decided to make this event series happen. And there are not that many events for game industry focusing on legal aspects. And even though almost all of the startups are wondering the same questions, and like it, but just here, often the greatest need for advice is when there is least available. So when you have an idea for a game company, when you're getting people for it, when you're actually starting the business, that is when you would need most tips, and there is not that much available. So this is one of the goals we need to overcome. As you know, there is a global setting for game industry. So even though you all work in this area or in the Nordics or Finland or whatever, you're never competing with each other. And I think that creates a very welcoming, a warm community that encourages mutual help. And in that community, everyone gives what they can, and decided, hey, maybe I can give some legal advice for you guys. This is going to be a series of 4 events. And each event is going to consist of one theme from game industry and one entwined legal theme. I have some guests for each event. And today we have a panel discussion later today with very exciting people with their stories and what they are going to tell you from the field. And here you see the 4 events. Here's the first one, from an idea to a game studio, that you're attending today. The second one is going to concern game graphics, game engines, and other IPRs. The third one is player data, communities, and data protection, delving deeper into how do you utilize player data. And the fourth one is international employment and consulting in game industry. As you know, people are almost never just from one area, and usually an international setting. And so what do we do at Magnusson with the game industry? So it's a tricky one, tricky industry to be in as a lawyer, since, as you know, lawyers love some long contracts, like 50 pages, that only they can understand. And you see, what is the problem here? Plain language and easy to read contracts are what the game industry would want. It's a tiny community that is built on trust. There are a lot of people. Yeah, it's okay. I can press here. Yeah. And then community. Yeah. A lot of people, but it feels so connected, all of it. And the international scope, as I said earlier, is always present. You can't just think, what about this legal stuff in Finland? because many of the companies have a global audience, almost all of them. Lightning fast and easily available, that's must. And game companies often have potential for rapid growth and scaling. As you know, it can go from like 1,000% a year in revenue for like 3 or 4 years straight if it scales well. And our goal is to help Finnish game industry to grow, and we want to provide legal services for them. And we have offices in 6 countries and operate in the Northern Hemisphere. And here's just a quick overlook on their gaming team. Yeah, and next onto the shareholders agreements. So I want to ask the audience, do you know what the shareholder agreements are? Some, yeah. Yeah, some, yeah. Yes and no's. Yeah, yeah. So some had some idea what it's about, but yeah, maybe after this 25 minutes or so, you have better understanding. The agenda. Yeah, what is it? And what to include? These questions are just to set you in the right mood. How the shares can be transferred, what is drag along, what is tag along, and what is the connection to the articles of association, and what are the most common pitfalls. And I try to keep the language as easy as possible, but if you want to know more about something or have trouble understanding, please let me know. And this, I have just one slide for this approach, but I think this is the most important part, since when you start thinking, yeah, I have an idea for a company, I have some friends, we are going to maybe produce mobile games, and I want at least my shares to be transferred to my brother maybe later on or something. This is the approach you have to take. Think first and act second. And this is the, if not the most difficult and most important, at least one of them. And with the other shareholders, you likely have a common goal and mutual interest. So cooperation is a good way to go. And then should always be tailored to a specific situation. This means that if you take just the contract, try to find some template, signatures, and good to go. No, that's not the way to go. But you should always think first and act second. Where we are, where do we want to go? Just like starting a business, you're thinking, yeah, we have like 3 people, and where we want to go, funding like next December, and then we want to scale fast from there and whatnot. And who does what? In the later slides, I will talk about the roles. Keep it simple and think the roles beforehand. And what you are trying to achieve and why, I come back to this as well, and expectations of all parties. So that maybe someone is just there for financing. He doesn't want to work there. He has some other business he's working at and has no time. And his or her expectation can be that he can exit in the coming like 1 year or 2 years. So first, gather around the table and ask these questions first. Yeah. And then you start drafting. Actually, there are a couple of other things that determine your relationship. There is, of course, the law, the Companies Act, then the AOA, and other agreements between the shareholders, SHA, and there can be also other agreements. And here, nature of SHA, this is important. to understand, since mostly people just think it's all the legal stuff, and actually it's so different to think the corporate side and the SHA side, since as put there, it's a private law contract and creates obligations for the parties involved and no one else. Whereas Article of Association, it's public and anyone can access it. So maybe you can think what things you can put there available for everyone and what things you want confidential, and that binds the parties. So AOA is towards everyone else, and SHA should be, it binds only the parties. Yeah, here are the roles. This is the important part. There can be founders, of course, working shareholder who puts not just money into company, but they're working as well. And then investors can come in at different stages, and it depends a lot when they're coming, what kind of things should be in SHA. Option holders and industrial investors as well. Yeah, and there with the arrow, different shareholders influence what matters covered. Yeah, and this in advance is the important part, since you should draft this before anything, before the company is like 5 years down the line, and then you think now it's coming problematic, and we are actually in quite bad space already. So in advance, so that everyone knows what the obligations are, when these obligations need to be fulfilled, and what are the sanctions. Since if you put all of these in the SHA and everyone knows them, you can avert so many disputes later on. And so the shareholders agreement is a tool first and foremost. And this lower bullet defines a lot of the game industry as well. Should be clear, logical, and understandable. So everyone who reads the same text should make the same conclusions. And lawyers are not usually not that good making that, since they can put some clauses that only they understand, but of course all of the shareholders should draw the same conclusions. Yeah, just food for thought. What should be agreed upon in the SHA? Do you have any suggestions? Anyone? That's okay. We'll go through like the main ones. And this list can be quite intimidating, but it's quite basic. And this being said, the SHA can be very simple. If you're just starting the business, it can be a few pages, but usually something around 20 pages. But yeah, it depends a lot. Corporate governance, actually I'll go through most of these in later slides, but corporate governance is important one. How do you want to run things? How do you want to make decisions later on? Since if you don't have an SHA, the Companies Act will govern everything you do, and their majority decides, and there is not going around that in any way. And yeah, what I highlighted there, transfer and redemption of shares. That is the important one. Yeah, the goals of the business. Maybe if you have read some contracts, there is always the background and purpose section that almost always is disregarded, since there's just some unmeaningful stuff. But here, No, absolutely not. The agreed objectives should be written down there so that later on, when someone makes some interpretation about the contract, they can draw their conclusions from that. And attach your business plan, of course. The policy and structure, here highlighted the future shareholders. Maybe if you have funding round coming up, it's better to just draft a new SHA, but for anything else, you should make it like future proof. And financing, how is the business financed? Who puts how much money in and what they get for it? Do they have obligation to provide additional equity later on? Like maybe you pay like 10,000 now and 50,000 in the coming six months or something to finance the company until they could secure the funding. Yeah, and dividends. How do you get money out of your company? Here I've highlighted the way the minority rights and the Companies Act, because if you don't have this in your SHA, they can claim dividend and there's not much you can do about it. And the working obligations. Who do you want to work there? Do all the shareholders work? How long? And this vesting is very common in game companies. They want just that person, no one else. The case it may even be that that person is invited to shareholder position just for their to secure their working obligation. And vesting works like that. You come in the company, you work there like 3 or 5 years, and then you own the shares. And before that, the company may claim back those shares with the original price or whatever was given for them. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, the question was, what does it mean to waive the minority rights? And yeah, maybe this explains. In the Companies Act, the minority shareholder who owns maybe 2% of the shares, they can say that they want the company to pay dividends. So hand out money out of the company for the shareholders. And that can lead to a situation where the company cannot grow as efficiently, since that money is needed for future operations and expanding globally and whatnot. Did this clarify? Yes. That was a good question. And this is what lawyers usually do. They take things for granted, so they just skim through things that are very important, but not explain them well. Yeah. And the transfer of shares, as I pointed out earlier, very important. Sometimes a shareholder is entitled to or obliged to transfer their shares, even if they don't want. And maybe I'll just go to this tag along and drag along what was in the first one. So tag along is a case. I want to sell my shares, and I have a buyer already for those shares. And with the tag along clause, another shareholder in my company can also sell their shares if they want. And that works so that if one person wants the share, he or she has to secure that's right for other people as well. And drag along is sort of the opposite. Whereas I have found a buyer for the company, I have maybe 50%, less than 50% of the shares, and he would want more than 50%. So what do I do? I can ask someone if they want to sell their shares as well. They don't. They usually don't. But how do I get the buyer to get my shares as well? They want almost they want all the shares 100%. I don't have that. So the drag along works like that. I can oblige everyone else to say, sell their shares as well with the same price that I sold mine. So if you understand these two, it can clear sort of the selling of your shares under the SHA. And what else? Right of first refusal. That is very common. And it works like this. I want to sell my shares again, and I have a buyer for them. There's no tag along, no drag along scenarios available. I have to offer those shares first to another shareholder in the company, so that, for example, a family can keep the shares inside the company, inside the family, and not that I can sell for some random people I met somewhere. So that's they have new people that they don't know as shareholders. So usually this is one of the most common things to have for that. Now that you can see the currency is coming down. Yeah. Yeah, much more pleasant. And now we have a nice lighting as well. Yeah. Incapable to work, or death or divorce. Always, not always, there can be holding companies, but natural persons like you and I are the shareholders of a company. If something happens, what happens to the shares? If I die, what happens to the shares? If I divorce and my ex-spouse wants the shares, but the shareholders don't want my ex-spouse as part of the company, what happens? And all of these should be taken care of so that they can be ready for these kind of situations. And valuation, yeah, it is more important later on in the company. Non-competition, non-solicitation. Non-competition, you cannot compete with the business, and non-solicitation, you cannot ask the clients or employees or customers, whatever, to join your new venture or company wherever you're going. And what I highlighted there, usually they bind after the termination for some amount of time. And IPRs, who owns them, and what IPRs, do they license them and whatnot. Yeah, and the connection to the Articles of Association. This is in Finnish yhtiöjärjestys that is registered and public, as I said earlier. And as I said, this is a public document, a wide discretion. So you can almost anything put here, but not anything. So how the SHA came to such a dominant position is that it is a way to agree on matters in a more detailed way and confidentially. So it makes sense. But always you should read this together, Article of Association, Shareholders Agreement together. And yeah, no formal requirements. It's not governed by the Companies Act, SHA. Yeah, and a couple more. Yeah, always look into the future. Be ready for all major changes. What I said in the first slides, just think where you're now and where you're going, so that you're ready when maybe new shareholders come, someone wants to leave, and the background and purpose section is very important here as well. And there at the bottom of the slide, exit objectives should be written down so that anyone is not bound to the company forever, but they can exit when they want. And in some previous slide had the good leaver and bad leaver situations. It is just like it sounds. The good leaver is leaving in good terms, and bad leaver is leaving in bad terms usually. So the bad leaver has breached the contract, or maybe just wanting to leave without the consent of the other parties that is written down in SHA. So when he or she wants to leave, that triggers the bad leaver penalty, and usually that is less favorable for that shareholder than the good leaver. And good leaver is they come into conclusion that maybe I should move to some other business, and I can sell my shares, and that is all good. And final slide, avoiding pitfalls. These deadlocks, not that common, but when it happens, it's very crucial. When you can't make any decisions, as I said earlier, on the Companies Act, it's always the majority that decides, and maybe SHA can be written in a way that you need 100% of the shareholders to agree on something, and then you haven't found out a way to restrict the transfer of shares, and that drives you in the situation where the deadlock happens, and there are so many shareholders, and even one of them doesn't want something to happen. So this is no to everything. And for sale we discussed. And the last one. Usually, any amendments require the consent of all parties, and always in new situations like funding requires new SHA. But questions. We had one excellent question. Do you have anything?
Let's see. Should work.
Okay, does this work? Okay, excellent. So one question is, so if we have multiple shareholders and they all have some kind of decision-making ability, and the company functions as some kind of democracy, then what decisions do the shareholders have to vote on? What decision is so small that it doesn't have to be considered by all shareholders, and what decisions are so big that they have to be considered with voting and such?
Same under the Companies Act. Any decision can be decided with consent of all shareholders. But what is so small? You can write that in the SHA. But usually it is like buying another company, or merging, or anything. That kind of decisions are the big ones, and there is much in between. And the small ones are like, do we need to buy a new computer for the company? And of course, that cannot be under the shareholders agreement. But there's a lot of things in between, and there's not like a clear line where you can say that this definitely should be. But you can write it down. You can maybe write down that everything over 10K should be decided by the shareholders. Thank you.
It's a good question. Any other questions in the room, or is there anything online? No questions. Feel free to write questions also online, people on the QA. But anybody in the room?
That is all right. If you have any questions later on, please ask me. Here's my contact information. And we have 2 offices, one in Helsinki, one in Tampere, in Finland, and 5 other countries. That was my presentation. Now we're going to have a small break, and after the break, we have a panel discussion named From an Idea to a Game Studio. So we have three lovely panelists here. Oh, that is cool. Now I'm going to introduce our panelists who can further introduce themselves after that. So, Elina Arponen here is an experienced game developer with 18 years in the industry. Her previous company was acquired by a social media app. Now she is the CEO and co-founder of QuickSave Interactive that develops top quality HTML5 WebGL titles for both Web 2 and Web 3 markets. Welcome. Do you want to? Is it on?
Is it on? Yes. Maybe. There is a light.
Yeah. Please tell me about yourself.
Yeah, well, thank you. First of all, great to be here. And yeah, I think that's kind of all in a nutshell. So yeah, long time game developer and gamer, of course, as well. Yeah, I think for the topic, it's kind of close to heart on like how to start a company, and I've started 2 so far, and yeah, I think it's a very great to have more people on that journey.
Yeah, thank you and welcome. And Olli Raudus, right here, is a 3-time game company founder with a business and game design background. And previously, he worked as a CEO at Skunkworks, and currently he's a co-founder and CEO of a 2-man studio called All Hats that is developing game for UGC platforms such as Roblox. Welcome.
Yeah, well, thank you. Happy to be here. Just wanted to correct, I don't know if we said CEO, but I was COO.
COO, yeah.
Yeah, not the CEO. But yeah, I have about six years in the game industry now. Founded 3 companies, Lunar Bytes, Skunkworks, and now All Hats. So I think I have some experience on this, at least in the founding part. Yeah, my background is in the game design and business side, but I've been able to do quite a lot of stuff, various tasks, jobs, wear many hats in the startups as you will if you start a company with a few people. And yeah, so let's see what this panel brings.
Yeah, thank you for coming. And finally, Jesse Ellonen there started his game development path by customizing UIs for pro players. Currently, he's the co-founder and CEO of Diono Games, a VC-backed free-to-play mobile games company that he founded together with a few other students 6 years ago. Welcome, Jesse.
Thank you. Yeah, immediately when you told me about this panel, I was like, okay, I have a lot to discuss because I have started in a similar way that a lot of you people here. So I'm hoping I can answer some questions and help you guys.
Yeah, just keep the mic. You can start answering this first question. So what factors do you consider essential for building a strong foundation for a game studio?
I think the main thing is the co-founding team and the passion, because when you start out, most companies don't start with the cash. You kind of have to be the kind of starving artist, the person with the passion, have to climb a lot of mountains. And I think that's if you don't have the passion and the will to push without the money, then it's going to be really hard. So I think that's definitely something you should start with.
Yeah, I definitely agree on the co-founding part, that the team is very important. You don't have to kind of over-engineer the team. It's kind of like, it's probably people you know, and you kind of, but one thing you have to do is have these kind of discussions on like, why are we doing this? And yes, everyone needs to have passion, but it kind of needs to be aligned as well on like, you are trying to get to the same kind of goals. The co-founders really need to have alignment in all stages of the company. Even later, like years after the founding, if you are a founder of the company, your word is going to have more weight than someone else's, independent of the role, whatever role you are doing. Maybe you are programming, or maybe you are doing art. You are not the CEO, or you are not the CTO. Or but if you are a founder, you have this aura of like kind of like power in a way that what you say is very effective. So it's really important that the founders are aligned in their vision as well. And kind of like what you were talking with the shareholders agreement, that is like a written contract, but there's also like things outside that, talk about it. Why do you want to do this?
Yeah, maybe I can add to that. Both very good answers. I would answer the same, but maybe like thinking about the roles, like when you want to make a game company, I assume you want to make games or build a game, and you have to understand that that's the product you're building. So then you don't have to have all the pieces in place in the very beginning, but you should have at least some people, 1 or 2 or maybe 3 people who can actually build the product. So it's not just someone who does fundraising all the time or someone who makes only art. And then you have very nice pitch deck, but then who is building the company? Maybe you need a programmer. Actually, you will need a programmer, at least until the AI will do those things well. And yeah, what else? Strong foundation. Yeah, trust between the co-founders. There are many things you need to make. As Jesse said, you need to have a passion to do that, because you're gonna sacrifice a lot of like you could be working in a place where you get a stable income, but most likely in the beginning you won't have any income, so you need to be ready for that kind of sacrifice, that you're building your own thing and it might take a while. So that like attitude, a mental mindset is needed.
Yeah, and this came very nicely full circle. Yes, I started with the passion project sort of mindset, and Olli finished with the same idea. Anything to add for one another, or yeah? So how do you approach creating a business plan and defining your long-term goals for game studio? So you start the business, and not immediately maybe you think the long-term goals, but how do you approach it?
I can start first. So I think the biggest distinction, I'll be short, is like, do you want to build a lifestyle, or are you doing like a growth startup? I mean, that's the biggest difference. Are you going to go after VC money and big growth business model, or do you just want to make a living? And that's a very two different paths for the business model, and what kind of things to consider.
Yeah, your business plan is very important, so you understand that you're actually making a business and not just a hobby. So your most likely your goal is to make a living out of the company at least, and or then grow the company, as Elina said. So you have to have some understanding on how does this business work. So how is this going to make money? Because that's ultimately what the company needs to make to survive and grow. And about business plans, I've done a few, and can already tell that there are no templates for game business anywhere. And many institutes like banks and Business Finland and Starting Money, they require some kind of business plan. And it's very hard to make based on their templates. So you just have to then have a discussion with them and explain why your next year's revenue is somewhere between 0 and tens of millions.
Yeah, that's a good point about the business plan. You sometimes do need like a traditional one, but good investors don't ask one from you, not the traditional type at least. Pitch deck, yes, but not the business plan.
Yeah, I just want to touch on the fact what you said in the first question. I think this also comes back to when you have your co-founding team, when you make the decision, why are we doing it? Like, start with why. And this is kind of like the how are we going to do it? If we decide you should already make the decision when you found the co-founding team that, okay, we're going for VC money, this is how we're going to do it. And it all comes back to the question when you start. You have to, like Elina said, you have to kind of have the idea on what is it you're going for and how are you going to do it. And it feeds to the same thing.
Thank you. And now that we have touched a bit about the funding already, so could you share some strategies for securing funding and attracting investors to support the growth of a game company?
I can start. Yeah, for us especially, like as Joeli mentioned, we started straight from school. We were still in school when we founded Dino Games. And for us, like the main thing we learned really quickly is that you should make connections as soon as possible. Once you make the company, if you decide to go for VCs, it doesn't hurt to just connect with VCs, go to events, talk with them, pitch your game. Like we were way too early when we pitched our first time, and the investors were like, okay, this is really cool what you're doing. You're way too early, but I would like to talk with you once you're further away or further up with the development. So that's something I think is super important. Like they want to know you guys. You don't have to be afraid for like going there, and if you give a bad rep or if they say no, it doesn't mean that they don't want to talk with you. It's just like it's the big hump you have to go through. Just contact them as soon as possible. Always better if you have a warm contact, someone who already is contacted on LinkedIn, for example. That's a really good way.
I can follow up on that. So yeah, so when you're more experienced in the industry and people know you and trust you, then raising the investment money is easier because you already know the people and they know your background. So that becomes easier. But it's very, very difficult in the very beginning if you start straight out of school, basically. No VC will invest you, most likely. You need to find some angel investors who believe in your stuff in the beginning. And then usually many investors, especially the VCs, they require some numbers from the game. So you kind of have to build the game either with your own money or no money to a point where you can get some players in and get some quantitative and qualitative data that you can show to the investor that, hey, this is actually generating some traction and we need money to scale this thing. But before you have any kind of data to share, it's very, very hard way to get investment money. So you might need to do something else to finance your company.
Yeah, I definitely agree on the networking part, like getting to know a lot of people, and don't like underestimate anyone like who might have a contact to someone. Like the person you are talking to might not be the one that gives you the funds, but that person might know somebody who does. Accountants, lawyers, a lot of people are dealing with these deals, and they might know someone. Then or other entrepreneurs are very good making introductions to funds that have invested in them. So just getting to know a lot of people is very essential. And yeah, I mean, I feel like, always there is the data, and if you have like if you can show numbers and KPIs, but it's possible to get funded in any stage, like with a slide or with a team, or we have this idea. Sometimes it's easier with an idea when you don't have anything out yet, because it's kind of like when you have something out, then you have the but how are the numbers, and then the limits get higher and higher. But it all comes down to who do you know and who knows you, and it's, I mean, you can do investment round with like cold contacting in LinkedIn. But we raised one round where we had not met the people that funded us before, but they knew some people that we knew. So it's kind of like the VCs are also doing like they're hiring you. So they do the background checks. They check on people who on like, is this person for real? Like, is this a good person? and so they will make these reference checks whether they tell you or not. So if you have like a good reputation, or you know people in the industry, whoever, like you might have common contacts, and it's always good to kind of just know a lot of people.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. And then onto the building the team. So you have the founders who work there, and what happens then? How do you go on about building a team that fits the company culture?
Well, I can briefly say, well, congratulations if you have some founders first. That's good. It's not that easy to find people who share the same vision, and that's one thing that first you need to agree with the founders that you all share the same vision. What do you want to do together? What do you want to achieve? As we talked in the shareholders agreement and all this time, that's important. And then like getting more people to share the same vision. That's hard work, and but then keeping the culture is up to you, and then you need to work towards to keeping the culture. Maybe you should define what are the things you want to do and what is not something that you do in your company, and then just don't hire those people who are not like working with the same values as you are.
Yeah, definitely. Like the having the values and the culture somehow written is making it easier if you can like say like, okay, this is how we work. But sometimes it's super hard in the very beginning, and if you are like less than 10 people, it might be like, well, do we really need it written yet? But the more you can articulate on like how do you work and what are the important things, like for example, if your team has a strong self-management culture, like everyone is pretty independent in managing their work, that's important to say to the candidates, that some people actually love that kind of environment, that I don't want anyone to micromanage me. But then again, like some people are kind of like, no, that sounds like a lot of work or something, or I don't like that. So like the more you can articulate on how you work, the easier it's for the potential recruits also to know where they are coming to. But of course, you also like when you are, well, then it's also your job to kind of sell the vision there on like trying to convince people to come over.
Yeah, I think like we invest heavily into culture, and like it's present from the very first kind of interview with a candidate, because we have such an unique and different culture from most companies that we kind of have to bring it forward to the candidate, because if you don't really buy into it, it's going to be really hard to work. But then those people who enjoy the kind of culture we have, they retain super well and are extremely happy. And we've also noticed that like it's a really big strength on the market if you have a culture, because then when you get those candidates, they really love working there, and it's super easy. It feels like people have been working, who you just hired, they've been working there for 10 years because they just know based on the culture that how things work, how we do stuff. For example, independent, like self-management, and those kind of things are extremely important for us. And we actually go through our values in the I think on the second round. So we have basically 2 rounds, and the second round we go through our values and discuss these kind of matters.
Yeah, so it seems that it can be difficult to find the right people, but when you find those and they match the culture, it's really good find. Yeah. So when you have a team, you have some business going, and you have some revenue. How do you balance the creative vision of your games and the commercial success? Sort of, if you want to have this vision that you have great game, great idea, great people, and that doesn't equal commercial success. So how do you balance those?
Yeah, I think this is like a typical trap for first-time founders and first-time game teams. And I've discussed a lot with people here as well about these kind of approaches, that make sure you're not, if you're going to build a business, you can't make the games for you and have this kind of starving artist approach. You have to build it with the idea that I am building this for the audience, for the customer, as a business, and it will be. It was, at least for us, really difficult. We like to make super cool games for ourselves, but once we got into the business, we really quickly realized that if we want to continue making games together, we have to focus on the business side. We can't make games for ourselves.
Yeah, it has to come from everyone, like the designer, the game designers. They need to understand the business as well, and they need to be thinking about it. And it can't be just like the CEO is thinking the business and everyone else is making the game. I mean, yeah, like that's pretty much the CEO is doing. Like I'm doing a lot of other things. I'm not doing so much in the game, but everyone in the team needs to be kind of thinking the business.
Yeah, just following up on that, if you have a game team that only thinks about the creative side and not the business, then you end up making features and spending time and money on features that doesn't increase your revenue or retention or anything. So then if you run a business, you have to think about it like, let's say I have a five people team and I pay them competitive industry salary every month, and then they deliver a feature that doesn't really do anything for the business product, as in the game, then that just cost me 1 month of 5 people's salary plus all the stuff. But then it doesn't have any impact to the actual revenue growth or anything. So it's tough thing because it's a passionate industry and people really like to do cool stuff, and you have to find the balance that also you need to allow the creativity in the game team. But then yeah, I guess it's you have more experience, but just wanted to say that maybe sometimes you can have more creative stuff and try out new things, and then but sometimes you just need to improve the monetization, for example.
Yeah, but they're not always against each other. Like the fun thing about games is like the business can be creative and the business can be fun as well. Like it's not always like, oh, now we have to do some business. You can make that part kind of fun as well.
One thing I can tell from my past experience with previous company that we did one mistake, or many mistakes for sure, but one big mistake was that we focused on developing features that didn't end up making any impact, and we spent a lot of time and money to develop those, whereas then when we had the actually impactful features coming basically too late, that we made an update 1 year too late, and I think like basically the best update we did in terms of revenue was the last update we did to the game. So if we just did that first and then focused on doing the other cool stuff, then maybe that company wouldn't be closed yet.
Yeah, thank you. And it sounds like the development and the marketing and running a business is all connected, so you can make good decisions throughout the process. And on that, what is your view on the importance of market research? How do you find the segment you're looking for, and if they play your games, if someone else plays your games, and so that you can better cater to those people?
Yeah, so since we are kind of like looking at a lot of emerging markets, like we've been working with a lot of these social media applications, like embedding games, like Facebook instant games or Zoom app games, and now looking at blockchain, that we have one game on Tesla's blockchain and another one on Ronin. So these are a lot of like, I would say, kind of emerging markets. So we need to do a lot of market research ourselves because there's not so much benchmarks available. Like if you are doing like maybe like a free-to-play mobile game, there's a lot of data available, like a lot of studies already. Of course, you need to look at those studies, but like for us, like we need to study the market and like who's playing here, and kind of talk to other developers and try to talk to the players and yeah, and try to understand on like what is the reality, like what does the platform itself say, what are the players actually doing, what do the other developers say, and what's the data that is available there. So yeah, it's super important because your game needs to match where it is and who's there.
Yeah, so market research is very important, as because we just talk about the business and everything. It kind of ties to that. It's not just like we want to make a game for us or our dream game, because we also want to make a business. And then if you want to make a business, you need to have customers, and then you need to find who are these customers and what do they play now, what do they lack in the market at the moment, but that we could bring them. So understanding those can be very hard to find that information or actually figure out who is player and why does they play this kind of game and what are their reasons for playing and paying in these kind of games. It's tricky, and you can basically sink endless amount of time on doing research also, but that's not smart either because you should also develop the product. So it's like balancing again, like you need to do something so you have some kind of idea what you're building and who you're building it to, but then also then you do it and test it and then make more decisions.
Yeah, exactly. As you said, I think that like market research is extremely important. With the rising user acquisition costs on free-to-play mobile, there are so many competitors that you can't just make the game you think is great. Even there's a lot of dead awesome games that just didn't find the audience, and that's the brutal kind of truth of free to play. It's really, but as Olli said, it's a balancing act. You have to focus on it, but if you just do market research, you'll close the company with a big bunch of done research and nothing to show for it. So it is a balancing act, but I think you can't I think the good days are gone that you make a really good game and you can put it out and there will be players for it. You have to kind of craft the game for the audience you've already decided on.
Yeah, and if you can talk to the players in very early stage, that's really good. So if you have a game and you get 15 players there, just try to contact them and ask why they played and what did they like and what they didn't like. So then you start understanding the people who play the game.
Yeah, and you're exactly on the spot. What I was going to ask next, just a little background. At the last week's Paradox deep dive, I heard that they said that they don't actually trust that much that the players can articulate what they want. Do you think if you communicate with the players that they can articulate what they want?
Yeah, we've adopted this kind of Discord approach. So we put Discord into our games, get people in just to hear what people say, but you have to take everything with a grain of salt. It can be the loud minority that say, okay, this mechanic is really bad, I don't like it, but 95% of the players who don't come there and whine like it. So it is, I think you have to take it with a grain of salt, but I don't think you should neglect what people are saying.
Yeah, I can add to that. So yeah, sometimes they don't know exactly. Sometimes you can get a message that your game is pay to win and I don't like it, and then okay, sure, then okay. But then if you get like 10, 15, 20 messages saying the same, maybe you can also like give some more thought and weight into that kind of stuff. And at Skunkworks we did that every week. We checked in this this like a weekly community snapshot kind of thing that kind of like quantified the tickets that we've got, that like, hey, there is now a bug in the game. We got like 30 reports of this bug, and then of course, and then we fix it quickly. But then there might be sometimes some like requests for features or some general thoughts, and then we had community managers talking to the players and seeing how the people talk about the games and what kind of reviews we get. And yeah, you can find some good feedback and improvement ideas from there. But as I said, you also have to kind of, you're eventually the developer, and you make the game and the product, so you make the decision.
Yeah, and sometimes the players, they know what's the problem, but maybe their suggestion for the solution is not the right one. So it's easier to listen to the problems only if people are complaining about something and then come up to the solution. I think that's this classical example. I don't remember which game it was, but one of the shooter games, players were complaining that one of the guns is too slow. But actually what they did is they just increased the animation, that when you load the gun, the guy like really throws his arms around it and pumps it up, and they made it even actually slower, but nobody complained anymore because it felt like fast, because the guy is like doing all he can to get it loaded. So it was actually like they added animation, and that fixed the slowness of the gun. So the fix can be something else, but there was a problem on like perceived issue with something. So yeah, with a grain of salt, like you listen to them, but you also like, yeah.
Yeah, I heard the same about some shooter that was like Axis and Allies, and they had exactly the same gun with same specs but different sounds, and the community was complaining that it's not fair that the other side has access to this gun, even though the numbers were identical. And it was the sound, how it sounds if you shoot with the gun. Has it with oomph, or is it like dee? Yeah, it matters a lot on the experience about the reload animations and sound design and that as well. So the players are not always finding the right solution, but to wrap it up, it is good to have a close connection to your community. Yeah. So could you share some insights on effective monetization strategies for game studios, considering both traditional and innovative approaches?
Well, okay. I guess it depends on the kind of product you're building. I don't have any innovative stuff to know out of my head to give, but the traditional ones that, well, premium games is easy. You just make a game and someone purchases it. It's usually a typical big AAA game, like Hogwarts Legacy was one-time payment and that's it. But then when you go to free-to-play, which is a way larger market in terms of revenue, then it becomes tricky, and then you need to kind of define that, do I want to, for example, monetize the game with ads, or do I want to monetize the game with IAPs, and what kind of IAPs? Is it like one-time purchases or subscriptions? And they all very defined depending on the game, the product you're trying to build. That kind of, yeah, there are many ways to monetize the game, and then you just need to think about what is the best way for you and for your game, your business, to monetize the game. And maybe Elina has innovative ways.
Yeah. I mean, funding a company, funding a game, there's a lot of ways. Of course, the kind of angel VC approach, or getting it far enough that you might find a publisher, or but yeah, I guess, I mean, there can be like some really innovative ones. I don't know if a game company, but like I know Airbnb in the beginning, they were funding themselves by selling cereals, because like that's that's somehow something they got their hands on, and they couldn't raise funding, so they were selling something totally different. So yeah, anything is possible. I'd say that because we've been working with the blockchain, and a lot of people might think that the blockchain offers like, hey, let's like pre-sell game items, like we can like pre-sell our game currency like a token, or we can pre-sell our game items that would later be like IAPs. But actually, for me, that is not a super new way. That's just like a Kickstarter project. So we've had a Kickstarter and other services available for quite a while, and of course they always carry the risk on like, does the project complete for the person who kind of buys the product before it's made. And of course, also for game development, it has problems because game development is very iterative. it's not a waterfall project where you have exact plan and then the game comes out exactly as you were planning. You know, it that tends to change on the way. So if you have like given like super exact specs on like, this is the game we're gonna make, and then your community is gonna complain if you find that something else actually makes it more fun. So so yeah, I think that's kind of the blockchain sounds very innovative, very new, and it does have like, you know, a new way, a mechanism to do that. But I think it's very similar to Kickstarter if you do it early on. I mean, for the monetization once the game is out, then of course, like, you know, you can have, well, blockchain kind of offers the similarities as like IAPs, like buying some assets that are in the game. Yeah.
Yeah, I think most of the things were said here. And on the free to play, we like I think there's a lot of good approaches to monetization on mobile free to play, and I think it's more about you don't basically innovation is always good, but it's also like you don't have to innovate the wheel, rediscover, just use. I think it's more about finding the perfect fit for your audience, choosing the kind of how much ads do you have in a mobile game versus how much IAPs do you have in a mobile game. How do they, where is the focus on those as well? So I think that's the main point, especially on mobile.
Yeah, I could also, for the company funding, one more point, that also like kind of doing something like contracting or doing games for others to fund your own productions. That's kind of common as well. It's usually not aligned with getting VC money or investment, because investors don't like you to work for somebody else. Like, they want you to work for them if they fund your company. But as a starting point, it has become, I feel like, a little bit more acceptable that if you started with that and then you evolved kind of out your own IPs. And of course, you can do co-productions as well, like make the game with someone else, and then maybe you share the risk and then you share the reward, and you have like a, you know, some kind of like a 50-50 share on the product if you were both kind of, you don't need to have as much money yourself to kind of bring it to the end.
Yeah, we actually did some outsourcing job or basically ported games to mobile from other platforms in the beginning, because we didn't have money and we kind of wanted some kind of revenue for the company, that we could buy licenses, etc. But yeah, I don't think like once you're in negotiations with a VC or you're going for that VC cash, they will not like it that you're working on something else and not focusing purely on what they're funding.
Yeah, I can answer the monetization part. What was the question again? Like about, I had some ideas. Yeah, effective monetization strategies. Yeah. So because we went to this funding part, and I was like thinking, did I talk about funding? But monetization, still continuing on that. Just wanted to say that when you make your game, don't be afraid to trying to monetize it, or at least try putting some IAPs or ads in, because eventually you're going to put them anyway there, and like kind of, it's a balance between like how early you want to monetize the game if you don't have enough content and you don't have any like maybe the retention of the players is not that good. But I've seen many studios and teams that they don't monetize the game or even put the test purchase or ad in there, where they could have put it like early on to get some kind of monetization data also, and maybe some revenue even. So don't be afraid of putting some monetization in. And then I had something else, the monetization part. Maybe it comes later.
Yeah, sure. And I'll comment a bit about the waterfall method for Kickstarter and other crowdfunding platforms. It has some legal issues as well, since if you have some kind of premium model that is sort of crowdfunded, you have to have some like not physical, but some exact product that you're going to give. And as you said, it can be very different when you start that Kickstarter and when you finally release it. Yeah, and there's those problems as well. But yeah, one way of monetizing the product early on. Yeah. Now about some valuable lessons. Do you have some you would like to share that have contributed to your current success?
I'd say like the biggest lesson I've learned is to not be afraid of failing. I think that's the biggest, especially when we started out, we were super timid, kind of. There's a guy from a big mobile game company. I don't want to go there and look dumb, or I don't want to contact a VC because I don't know what they think about me, or talk with this person. I think that's the biggest thing. Like everyone, especially here in Helsinki area, in Finland, are very helpful. Don't be afraid to basically go and talk with people.
Yeah, I guess one word that I've learned is that you need to learn is patience. So things take their time, and it'll come there. You know, it's a marathon. It's not a sprint, and you have to kind of pace yourself. And yeah, you would always want things to go faster and happening yesterday, but it takes its time. So patience.
Yeah, don't be afraid of asking help, and so it's good that you're here and you can ask advice. And then if you have a problem, you can always ask your friends or someone in the industry you meet in these kind of events. That's important to ask for help if you're struggling with something or wondering. And then of course help others. Like when if someone asks help, you can help them, and then suddenly you have a pretty nice connection with this other person because they help each other maybe. And in the future, you never know how these things go. And especially in Finland, it's a very small industry, and many of us know each other. So it's kind of like us against the world kind of situation here. So helping others is very good, and many people does that here. It's quite open. So contribute to the community and ask from the community if you don't know something. So that's something that brings success over time and relationships. And then of course, like when you make a company, basic stuff like bookkeeping, don't do bookkeeping yourself unless you really like it and know how to do it. Like it's much cheaper and less stressful to hire one. So that kind of stuff. So, and also lawyer stuff. Like if you have a publishing contract in your table, ask a lawyer.
Hashtag
before
not an
you-
ad.
Before you give your whole IP to the publisher, and then you're kind of like tied to them.
Yeah, thank you. So you mentioned the relatively small industry here in Finland. Could you tell something about the challenges and opportunities you've encountered in hiring and retaining talent within the game industry?
Well, I think I mentioned already, but like for us, the challenges has been, of course, the biggest challenge is that Finland is kind of small, not a lot of people. Everyone is kind of competing for the same talent, and like our biggest kind of challenge is, of course, the kind of culture focus that we have, because it automatically kind of filters away people. So that's the biggest. But then of course it's the upside is that you get really well culturally fitted talent.
Yeah, I can second to that in the hiring, it's the challenges as is that it is that hiring pool is quite small, and the big companies, for example, And companies with funding, they hire the same people from each other, basically. There are people who jump from job to job every year or every 2 years because that's how it is. There are not many people, but then at the same time, it's an issue that new developers, young junior developers don't find a job. And then when there is a one junior position open, they get like 500 applications, and then that's an issue as well. So founding a company is a great way to get into the industry. But it's very risky.
Yeah, I mean, it is not easy. I mean, you look for the talent everywhere, and sometimes the young people are really good, and we've had a couple of TED people come in that were able to program something to production in a week. And when you see that from somebody who's coming from a basic school, like TED is like what, 8th and 9th grade, and you have somebody jump in and get the production code done in a week or two, it's like, okay, do you want to have a summer job? kind of a situation. So it doesn't always, it depends a lot on the like, could be anywhere that you have someone who's already really good, and we brought a couple of people from outside Finland to work with us in Helsinki. I mean, a lot of companies do that as well, so we look internationally. We are not yet at a point where we would hire you wherever you are, so we kind of look to people to be fairly close. Well, we have one person now in Sweden, but that's still pretty close. And yeah, but I guess the most difficult part for me in hiring is the letting go, because you never want to let go of people. It's terrible if you need to fire someone. So sometimes you have to do that because money runs out or something, but then there are situations where you need to take the trial period seriously. I mean, in Finland, it's now like 6 months or something that you have a trial period for both ways to look if this is the company for the employee and if it's the employee to fill the role. And if you have red flag during the 6 months, just stop it, quit it. It's like it's not gonna get better. It never gets better. And yeah, I mean, when I say it never gets better, I mean never. I mean, there can be exceptions to the rule, but if I'm an optimist. Like, I see the good in the people, and I'm like, yeah, like, let's give a second chance and a third chance and so forth. But it's just, you're trying to run a business, not a charity, and if people is not pulling their weight, then it's going to be bad for the whole team.
Yeah, and as you both mentioned, the culture, it's actually better to hire someone who fits the culture and the way of working and values that lacks a little bit of the actual technical skill set that they can learn. It's easier to learn the skill at the job than change your personality and values. So sometimes you might have 3 candidates you choose, and then you chose the most junior one because they fit the company the best, and then actually they are also more even more like motivated and enthusiastic to actually work because they got the job. And yeah, so hiring is a tricky thing, and retaining as well.
Yeah, thank you. So then about cooperation and interest groups. So how do you approach building and maintaining relationships with publishers, platforms, distribution channels, and maybe investors and other interest groups?
Maybe I can start here. I don't have experience on the publisher side that much, but when it comes to, for example, the platforms, for example, Apple or Google Play, with Skunkworks, it was that when the game started getting some traction, they either of them approached us. Actually, they sent a message to us that, hey, your game looks interesting and the numbers are scaling. Should we do something? Like, they want to establish the relationship with you, but of course, maybe you shouldn't rely on them getting to you. So then, of course, networking again, being in the events, talking to people, connecting to them. Maybe someone knows someone from Meta or someone at Google Play, and then suddenly you have a contact to them and you can start working together. And yeah, that's one way. And basically same applies to the investors and for the publishers, that just talk to them. They are human, and they have their own interest in their interests aside. So try to step on their shoes and think about what do they want, and how do they want to work with you, and how you can both benefit from each other. And that's one thing that in the very beginning, for example, we thought that like investors are some kind of gods because they have money, but then they're actually normal people whose job is to invest their clients' money to make profit from that. And then suddenly you think, okay, they're just doing their job also. So you don't have to be like worshiping them.
Yeah, I think networking is the key to this as well. And like you said, everyone you mentioned, they are there to make money as well. So they want you as a client. Google doesn't say that we don't want your game, especially if it's making it has good KPIs. So I think it's again just network, and there's a lot of good networking possibilities here.
Yeah, I mean, gaming industry is very connected and even globally, not just in Finland. And the events are very important. There are a few events a year that a lot of people go to, and that's kind of where the connections happen. And I have to say that the COVID time was kind of difficult for that. That it was there was a lot of kind of online networking events that come up, but now it seems like we are past COVID times. Events are back offline happening, and yeah, I feel that seems more effective.
Yeah, and to the final point, we have a lot of aspiring game developers and entrepreneurs here and online. So what piece of advice would you like to give them as they're starting their journey in the game industry?
I can start with the cliche one. Don't be afraid, and then network.
Yeah, I guess something that if you're first time making your own game is like when it looks 90% done, there's probably half still undone. So yeah, I mean, take that into account and publish the game, like put it out. I mean, whatever happens with it, if it's published, if it's out there, it's credentials, it's like you can show it, we did this. Whether you continue with the company and make another game, or you go for a job somewhere, if you can show that we actually published this, it's actually, because everyone knows that law that just the last mile is the longest. So yeah, getting it out the door it's a good thing.
Yeah, that's a good point, that get the game out. And then also, if you're thinking about starting a company, and you're waiting for a right moment, you might be waiting for the rest of your life. So if you actually want to make a game company, then do it and start building it. Of course, everybody has their own life, and their situation might not be good for that, and maybe you should wait for a month or 1 year, of course. But then, like, if you're just waiting for the right time, then it might never come.
Quick comment on that. It's the same as with kids. There's never a right moment to have kids. I mean, a company, you just do these things when you feel like it.
But yeah, I just want to touch on the point about get the game out. I think that's the main thing. That's how our company got started. Basically, we made our game and we wanted it to live forever. So we put it out on Google Play as playable, and you needed a registered company to have it out. And we basically founded the company because we wanted to have it out, and that was the whole thing for us. So yeah, put your games out. You can work on them forever, but just decide, okay, 6 months and it's out. It also helps you prioritize on your kind of development.
And you need to get the product out in the market, the customers, so that you can get the feedback from the players, and then you know if it's a product that you should invest more time and money in. Yeah, and then also it's like learning the process, like as I said, that making something from from nothing to out there is a great thing if you can do that. Not everybody can do that, so just do that and repeat it, and then also want to say that most of the time when you put the game out first, you want to look for some kind of numbers and great feedback, and you expect that yes, this is a great game. Usually it's not, but if you actually make a good game, the job just starts then. Basically, then now you have to scale it, and now you have to hire people and raise money to maintain the growth and all this. It's not done at all. Basically, it might be the next 10 years you're building the game.
Yeah, and that is a great way to wrap up this set of questions. And now I want to turn this for the audience. Do you have some questions here online? Yeah.
Yeah, hi, I'm Michael Dawkins, one of the founders at Dino Games. I just wanted to grill the panelists. Thanks for the good talk. Could you name like one moment during your stint that you were not prepared for when it comes to running a company or forming a company? One thing that came out of the blue.
Yeah, well, I think you know a lot about it, but when we got our first hires, we were not prepared.
Yeah, I think there's a lot, but it's hard to name like what would be like a top one. Yeah, I mean it's all have been like learning by doing, like learning about what are these contracts, or learning about how to hire people, learning to be speaking publicly about the things. I guess that was one thing. Like in the very beginning, the first company, we were thinking that we have this so great idea, we can't talk about it because someone's gonna steal it, and that's like a very stupid way to look at it. so it's kind of like, yeah, it's ideas grow when you talk about them. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess I had a couple. One as my personal journey as a game designer. I wasn't studying it anywhere. I learned it on the go. So this shouldn't come out of the blue for a game designer, but I learned the term metagame after 6 months of designing a game. So I had no idea how to make a game loop, like core gameplay, and then you go to meta game. It's a whole thing, but that came out of the blue for me, and that's super important for game design. And then other part came later that I didn't realize how big importance marketing and marketability has for free-to-play games until it went to the marketing phase. That actually, that's like half of the whole thing, or at least was. Maybe now these days it's not that much anymore, but that was a surprise for me.
Yeah, thank you for great answers and great questions as well. Yeah.
Hello. Yeah. Yes. Thank you. Thanks for the panel. It was very intriguing. I would have a question. Could you tell me, give some advice on market research? So we have a game and we want to kind of like zero in on the markets and our like target audience and really get a like proper understanding of who we want to reach with our game and what our market like target audience would be. What are some good, perhaps holistic, low-cost methods of zoning in on target audiences and like doing market research? I'm saying this from the perspective that there were broke students who don't have much money and we're like working on a shoestring budget.
What kind of game is it? Mobile, PC?
Basically, the short pitch is that we're making an anti-tower defense game. So we're taking the tower defense genre and flipping it on its head. It has a retro-futuristic aesthetic. We're targeting kind of strategy games fans, turn-based tactics fans, tower defense fans, and kind of like we won an award and we got a bunch of like attention on itch.io. So there is an audience, but we're kind of like trying to zero in like what does our audience like and like how can we get more data about our audience? Because yeah.
And is it on mobile?
Unfortunately not. Currently the target platforms are PC, but maybe we'll do a mobile release later if things go well.
Yeah, with the shoestring budget, you can do a lot of research. It just needs more effort from your end, going through discussion, like you have Discord communities, you can learn what the people that you think that are interested in your game, you can talk to them and maybe give them like some kind of like snapshot of your game and ask what they think about it. You could go through the review section of similar games on the market. That's what we did with our games at Skunkworks in the beginning. So we looked into the Google Play reviews. I think we had some kind of tool that scoured through like X thousand of reviews and then made some kind of data out of that. That was actually quite cheap to do. And then we got some kind of insight of what kind of players play these games because these players commented on the reviews. So we can't, anyway, you can do it. And yeah.
Yeah, but one fairly recent insight for our team is that you can do these player personas like it's whatever, like 30 plus female something, but sometimes those are actually too restrictive. Like a lot of there's like a huge percentage of Call of Duty players are also playing Candy Crush. So I mean, there's overlap in these audiences. Like people play this kind of games and this kind of games. So you can also think it like in spheres on like, okay, we have this like a merge mechanic, and then we have a futuristic art style, and then we have, you know, whatever is like a third component, and then like target like kind of those three. Okay, your core like fans are maybe and the intersection of all three, but you can kind of like have different overlapping sectors in your audience.
Yeah, I was just going to say the same thing. I think like if you're working on a shoestring budget, I think trying to discover those three kind of audiences that overlap your game is the best way, because like I think something that really bugs me is that the getting data is so expensive, getting the better data. But I think like we worked a long time without any of those tools, basically just going through Google Play, trying to understand why people could like games. I looked a lot on Reddit, etc., on these kind of like discussions what people had. But yeah, I think it is doable. You just have to put a lot more work into it.
Thank you very much. Your answers were very insightful. I think it'll be very, very useful. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, one more.
Yes, hi. Yeah, I have two questions. You said don't be afraid, but I am. so we have like a 6-ish student team, and we have worked on our game, VR game, and all the research says like don't do a VR game. But I'm studying XR design, so what you gonna do? Anyways, how to overcome the fear of founding the company? Besides all these facts that your first game doesn't make anything.
So one thing is like when we founded the very first company, like go through the worst scenario. Like what is the worst thing that can happen? Like, okay, maybe bankruptcy. Okay, what then? What happens if I bankrupt this? Do I have to move out from my house? If I do, would that be still like would I like survive that? Will somebody will maybe laugh at me, or someone will think I was stupid, or can I live with that? Kind of like what is the worst thing that can happen? And then if you are like, okay, I would survive that, you know, I wouldn't, you know, I would still, you know, go beyond that. Then it's like, okay, let's do this, because like, you know, kind of not kind of think it through once, but then of course like don't keep thinking on it like, oh, that's gonna happen, but like but yeah, then I guess that's yeah.
Yeah, I think it is super scary. Like I was super afraid because I was also the CEO. So I was like, holy goddamn, if things go bad, I'm liable in a way. And then I was also afraid of like, because I was super driven on, hey, let's do this. Let's like we were students, and I was like, yeah, let's just put our savings into this. Let's do this. And like I started thinking about what if it fails? What are the rest of the guys gonna do? I didn't even care about myself because I was more worried about what's going to happen to them. Am I leading them into something that I'm the captain of Titanic and okay, let's go, everyone on board, let's go. So, but like I think there's a lot of like these kind of helpful tutorials, not tutorials, but like guides that you can think about, like how to build a company step by step, because there is a lot when you think about founding the company. You have to think about the shareholders agreement, you have to think about like having an accountant, and you have to think about all these kind of things. But I think it felt, and I think it feels more scary than it is at the end. Once you just it's like the first time I had to jump from 10 meters in a, like, when I was a kid, I had to jump when we were swimming with school. I had to jump from the 10 meters and I was super scared. But once you did it, then you're like, okay, this wasn't bad.
I guess, one thing here is like you shouldn't risk too much of your own money or something. Like you should, moderate it to a level where you can live with the worst outcome. Like, like if the worst happens.
Yeah, I think the main thing is that make sure that everyone in the founding team knows what they're getting into. That's also something one of our co-founders also left because they were like a year in. They were like, hey, guys, I've been thinking about this. This is not for me. Too much risk. I don't like. I'm sorry. And we're like, okay, hey, it's fine. But like, I think it's a really big thing to make sure that everyone understands what they're getting into, because then it's also easier and you don't have to live with this kind of fear that what's going to happen to everyone else.
And I think the good part in like us being in Finland is that like Finnish healthcare will kick in if something bad happens to someone, like some serious health issues. There's coverage for everyone on that side. On the other hand, the Finnish unemployment money will be lost to anyone who founds a company. So but whatever happens with the company, it'll take at least 6 months to get any money from the government from the unemployment fund. So like this, those will be like, that's the thing you risk. But like Finland has some other like worst case backups there again, like with healthcare, for example.
Yeah, how to overcome that kind of fear is also, it's good that you asked for it, and it's one way is that you talk to people who've already done it. So you can ask like, how did you do it? How did you feel? What kind of issues you faced in the very beginning? And then you can evaluate, maybe can I also take the risk and face those problems? But to be honest, it's not that, as Jesse said, it's not that bad. There are many things that can go wrong and most likely will go wrong, and maybe the company won't last. I founded a third company, not for fun, but because the two previous companies are not very in a good shape, I would say. The previous company went bankrupt, and at first I thought it's a very big deal, but then actually it isn't. So just take the learnings and then make a new one. But next time you will start a company with the experience of starting a company and closing a company, so you know how the path is and what not to do next time and what to do next time, and it's the learning journey starts when you step into unknown. And the worst thing that happens, at least you had the learnings, so next time you're smarter.
Yeah, and those learnings are very appreciated in the gaming industry. Unlike the movie industry, is more unforgiving. That's what I hear.
So can I ask my second question? So, okay, I overcome my fear and we set up the company and we get some fundings and we published our game. And like I said, everyone was right. And the first game didn't make anything. What then? Is it always a bankruptcy? Is there some kind of other solution? Because our dream is to be some kind of indie game studio just to make some living, not to be the next Remedy or anything. And you say the bankruptcy isn't that bad, but hell, I don't have any money. So
Yeah. So yeah, you don't have to drive the company to bankrupt if you don't have any costs that would do that. So technically, the first company I was founding, it's still there because it costs like 100 euros per year to just be in the pöytälaatikko. So it's not bankrupt and it's just there, a little nuisance, but nothing else. But then and you can answer about the bankruptcy stuff and as a lawyer. But then what was the question? I already forgot. No, the bankruptcy stuff, you don't have to go there unless you have unpaid bills and someone will drive you to that direction. So
Yeah, that is true. Unless someone wants to liquidate the company and put it into money and want their bills paid, that is when those things happen. But failing with one game doesn't automatically mean that you're out of luck and cannot pay your bills and have to file for bankruptcy. But yeah, on the legal side, you have a limited liability company, and then you have invested some money for it, not that much, like maybe like hundreds or maybe like 1,000, 2,000 euros, and you won't generally you won't lose more than that. You have invested in that, and the bills are going to be paid from that money that is the company, and when that money runs out, it's okay. The company is no more, but you're yourself, you're not liable for that for those bills more than what the company has.
yeah, and also yeah, I can tell that the previous company has millions in debt, and I don't.
Yeah. I mean, it's rarely the first game that is the hit game from any game company. Like usually it's second, third, or something that then you actually make it a big one. So yeah, don't have to end it to the first game. It's just like managing the runway on like that's like if you are going for investment money, then if possible try to raise more than just getting the game out. That would be clever.
Yeah, like if the first game would have ended us, we would have died like 5.5 years ago, because we published 4 games or 5 games, which we've killed them all because they didn't bring enough, and we've probably killed like 8 games before we actually published them. So I think you should go with the mindset that the first will not be the one that gets you money, but take the learnings, what you learned, what worked, what didn't. I think that's also something like, I think you might have heard about postmortems. I think that's really important for the team, especially for the team to go through, okay, what did we do well, what failed? Let's learn from this, because I think in the end it comes down to, I put some money in the early days into our company just to keep it afloat. And I think like you don't have to close the company after the first. It's all based on the if you have debt, then someone might push you to it, but you don't have to close it after failing the first game.
So thank you very much for the discussion, very helpful and informative. I want to ask Elina, like, because you are a woman in game, like, do you meet difficulties or judgment? Because from what I know, it's very male-dominated industry. Like, do you get any difficulties with, for example, finding co-founder or talking to investors?
Yeah, I'd say like within Finland, like first of all, I never think about it. Like if you make it a problem, it becomes a problem. So if I would think that, hey, because I'm a woman, I can't, well, somebody generally described me once like I'm a person who walks like I don't see the borders, and I'm like, what borders? So so I, I literally don't see them. Like I don't feel like because of woman, because of this or that, I should do things differently. So so yeah, I don't think about it actively at all. But yes, like if I do like reflect on it, then I would say that in Finnish gaming industry, it's super welcoming. I've never had no problems, nothing. No one has been like talking to me like they wouldn't appreciate of like what I've done or anything. So but yeah, it's a bit different story when you go outside Finland, because then, and that's where the investment money is. So so with investment, yeah, it doesn't, I mean, it's easier to get like, I get like a free conference ticket because we want to have more women pitching here, or you know, I get a press because you know you need to have like a woman also in this article or something. So you get like this visibility, and of course you use it if you get it, because like, you know, you have the other disadvantages then, and I do think that the disadvantage is in getting the money. Like, you know, if you look at like how much like female CEOs have gotten funding, it's just in the statistics. Like it is there in the statistics. Like you don't get as much money as you know, from investors. So but of course you cannot think about that when you go out and pitch and you raise money, and I have been raising money successfully, so it's not like it's impossible, but I do think that that bit of it is harder, because like for gaming, like the Finnish like investment scene has grown tremendously in the past 10 years, but most of it is not for games. It's B2B. It's so you cannot find, like, you can find angels in Finland, and yeah, everyone knows there's like one or two funds, but you know, that's it, you know. And then for anything else, you go outside Finland, and there are differences, yeah. So but I say like it is what it is. It's hard for everyone. Like, you know, like raising money regardless of your gender, it's not easy. So it's like, it's also like, I don't want to belittle someone else, like, you know, you complain, you know, so it's like, yeah, but it's, yeah, I'd say that's how do I end this positively? No, but I mean, seriously, like it's like important to get, you know, more diversity in the teams, and you know, it's a super welcoming industry in itself. So like, it's, yeah.
One question. I'm curious about your finding your co-founder. Like, because I heard there's a dating period. Like, you get to know your co-founder, how they works. Like, I'm wondering, like, how was your journey finding your co-founder? On what occasion? How did you talk to them? How did you approach them?
Yeah, so the first company, we had actually 6 co-founders, and yeah, I was the only woman, and it was almost tactical, like, hey, let's put the woman as the CEO, we get most visibility. I mean, I was also the most interested. I had like done a little bit of management, and I was like, yeah, I can do this. And everyone else kind of, I come from a programming background, so I have like done like technical stuff, but there were better people in the team for that. So it's like everyone else had the, I was like, okay, I'll be the CEO. But yeah, all 6 of us, like, we knew from the industry. And actually one of them is also my husband, who was working in another game company, and then he knew somebody from there, and it kind of collectively, it just happened in a way. Like, we had this kind of very how would I say, you know, sides to us that were really well fit together. Like, we had all the different parts of the team there, and yeah, and as I said in the very beginning, like, it's very important to have a good founding team, but don't like over engineer it. It's like it sometimes kind of also just happens, and it was very good team. It was a big team, 6 people is a lot, and we heard about that, but then again, we were beginners. We needed to have all that talent in the team, and I couldn't have like hired that good talent because I didn't have money to buy like full kind of full competitive wages. So when you're all founders, you're all taking a bit of pay cuts, and that's how you go. So yeah, and then the second company was obviously easier because it's 3 of those 6. So like, we'd done it together before.
For my part, I actually got into the founding team by having one friend in there first, and we played Magic the Gathering together. I knew him from there, and then I had pitched my game idea to him because I knew he is a programmer. And hey, maybe we could make a game like maybe 6 months earlier, and then we kind of like started it, but then we didn't continue it. But that was like just like me explaining I have an idea for a friend, and then it went on hold, and then after a few months later, that he told me that hey, they had founded a new company with 4 other programmers, so 5 programmers founded a company, all from Metropolia students. I was also on Metropolia, but I studied business administration, and I had this passion for game design. And then he just asked like, hey, would you like to come pitch the same idea to our new group, because we could use someone who's not a programmer. That's a good also that someone who does design. I'm not a designer, at least at that point, but I had a passion that I want to be. That's how I started learning it. So I had business background, and they make a company and they had no business background. So then maybe they could get someone in the team. Then I went there and met the team, and they seemed very nice people, and I pitched the idea, and then suddenly I was in the team, and then it was me and 5 programmers, and then we started making the game, and that's how I met my first team. And not all of them have continued throughout the years, and the second company was basically founded with the same people, almost all the same, and then this third company was founded between me and Simo, who is basically came the same journey as I have. So he's the only one left as my co-founder.
Yeah. So our co-founding group was created in Metropolia as well when we were students. Basically, I pitched in a project, in a joint school project, my vision of a mobile game. Everyone was doing Arma 5 and like these huge games. I was like, I want something that stays online forever. Let's make a game on mobile and put it in Google Play. And basically I got given a few guys, a artist, a few programmers, and then we just started making this game. And we kind of had this honeymoon period where we kind of made the first game together, and we stayed together every day after school. We met at the library and just continued making our game. And then a year later, we had it ready and we wanted to publish, and then we founded the company. So it was like everyone kind of knew who each other were and what they liked and what they didn't like. So it was really natural for us to kind of decide on the co-founding group.
Very much.
Yeah, and finally, no, not yet.
I'm sorry. So very interesting panel discussion. I earlier, Olli, you said founding a company is no question to all of you, but you said founding a company is an easy way, or maybe an easier way to get into the game industry. But to like a solo developer, what way would you recommend? Founding a company or like searching a job?
I guess I can't really give a great recommendation. I can give it, it's up to you to how do you want to make. But one reason why the first company I joined was founded was because none of this student group who founded the company got a internship place in the game company. So they really wanted to work in the game company, but they didn't get anything. And so let's just make their own company and learn, then do the game anyway. And that's how we ended up getting into learning how to run a company and how to make a game. And we met other people like very like 6 years ago almost, just like-minded people, and then it will bring you somewhere along the line. Getting a job is hard, but not impossible. As mentioned before, you're a solo developer making a game. I would try to put it out as fast as possible and see what kind of feedback you get. Maybe you continue developing it, maybe you make another one, you build a portfolio of games, and then you can showcase your skills in these events. Okay, I have made this stuff before, and then maybe you get a job easier when you show your portfolio, or maybe you can find co-founders, or you can find a team that's looking for someone like you with your skill set. And there are many ways, but I mean, when I mentioned that it's easy way to get into industries because you're technically in the industry the moment you found a company. But getting paid in the industry that's a longer way to go.
Yeah, I was just gonna say the same, that in any case, keep making games or mods, or anything that is like a game thing, because it may end up in like a business and revenues, or it ends up you having a great portfolio to be hired.
Yeah, like when we started out, we made a lot of games, and we attended IGDA here in Helsinki, especially demo corners. We were like, at some point, the IGDA guys were like, "You're here every time." But yeah, I think because that was also a really good way of getting connections to bigger companies, because employees who work at Rovio, etc., these big companies, they are often also gamers. And when they see games on IGDA demo day, they usually play. I usually go and watch what kind of games people are making. So that's a really good way to kind of show what you're doing. And then if you mention that, hey, I'm doing this as a personal project, looking for job, that's like a really good way, because I don't think anyone looks at kind of your CV in that way. Similar to if you have something that you can show in a game, they don't really care if you studied game design somewhere. So I think just make games is the best way, and just connect with people on IGDA, etc.
Great, thank you.
I just wanted to add that it's technically as good to go become an employee of a game company and make games, or make your own company. So it's up to you. What's good for you, and what do you want to do?
Yeah, sure. And one other idea that came to mind is also game industry does value skills that from like other aligning industries. Like if you are a graphic designer and you've been designing graphics for, I don't know, marketing office, or you're a programmer and you've done some cool backend stuff or whatever other IT company, it's very valued. So like even if your passion is to be in games, but for money you're doing something else for a bit, that can be super valuable as kind of an experience on like showing things. But I would still, as a hobby, I would keep working on games as well.
Thanks.
And anyone else? I was just saying earlier, finally I get my microphone back, but it was cut out finally. Yeah. So thank you all for joining today. And as I said earlier, we have 4 event series. This is the first one, and 3 more coming after the summer. And you can find those events from the LGIN channels. I will post them as well, and Magnusson will post them as well. So thank you for coming, and hope to see you again in the following events. Can we get that applause for our panel? Yeah, thank you.